The wind carried the scent of iron and dust across the open plains of Nkuba 9. Under a burnt orange sky, the horizon shimmered like cracked glass, and the ground pulsed faintly with heat from the planet's twin suns. Sergeant Malik Owens adjusted the filter on his helmet and scanned the wasteland. His mission had been simple: survey the abandoned mining sector and confirm no hostile presence. But simplicity rarely survived contact with the frontier. A faint cry drifted through the comm static. At first Malik thought it was interference, but then it came again, thin, broken, undeniably real. He followed the sound, his boots sinking into the red dust until he reached a small ridge. Below him lay the wreckage of a transport skimmer, half buried and smoking, and beside it, a child. She wasn't human. Her skin, a soft shade of violet marked with silver patterns, shimmered beneath the sunlight. Her large eyes blinked at him through tears, and when she spoke, the words cracked through fear. "Help. My mother. Please." Malik's chest tightened. The woman lying beside the girl was badly wounded, her translucent veins dimming like fading lights. He crouched beside them, scanning her vitals. The readings were weak, too weak. "Hold on," he murmured. "We'll get her stable." The girl shook her head violently. "They left her. Humans. They shot her and left her to bleed." Malik froze. His pulse thudded against the helmet's seal. "What did you say?" Her lips trembled. "Your kind, the soldiers. They took our water. They said we had no rights here." He looked down at the alien woman's trembling chest. Every breath was a struggle, every heartbeat a countdown. Malik's training screamed at him: non-interference, no unsanctioned aid, no contact with local conflicts. Orders were orders. But standing there, watching a child clutch her dying mother, those regulations felt like chains. His grandmother's voice echoed through his mind, soft as a hymn. "When you see wrong and stay silent, the silence becomes your sin." He exhaled slowly. "I'm not leaving you." The girl blinked, confused. "You're human." "Yeah," he said, taking her small hand, "but that doesn't mean I can't help." He lifted the woman carefully, laying her head on a ration cloth. The smell of plasma burns mixed with the metallic tang of alien blood. The medgel hissed as it sealed part of the wound, but Malik knew it was too late. Her pulse grew faint, her breathing shallow. She looked up at him, eyes filled with gratitude and fear, and whispered something in her own tongue. The girl leaned closer, tears streaking through the dust. She said, "Thank you." Malik swallowed hard. His gaze swept the horizon. No signs of enemies, but the silence felt heavy, like judgment. He turned back to the child. "What's your name?" "Aya," she whispered. "My mother said humans have no souls, but you do." Malik's throat tightened. He wanted to say something, anything, but words failed him, failed. Instead, he nodded and stayed there, kneeling beside them, as the wind scattered red sand over their shadows. Aya's sobs were small, rhythmic, like heartbeat drumming. The sound reminded him of Atlanta's back streets, the pulse of music rising from church basements and open mic nights. He hadn't heard those rhythms since leaving Earth, but now they came rushing back, ghost notes of a past humanity had almost forgotten. He realized then, no matter how far from home he'd traveled, compassion was still his language. If this story has already gripped your heart, subscribe to the channel to stay with Malik and Aya through the journey ahead. Stories of courage, loss, and what it means to stay human among the stars. Malik adjusted his rifle strap, glancing toward the dying light. Protocol could wait. Orders could burn. The girl beside him needed safety, and the woman who had trusted him with her final breath deserved more than to fade into dust. He looked down at Aya. "We're getting out of here," he said quietly. "You're not alone anymore." The wind rose, carrying their silhouettes into the glowing dusk of Nkuba 9, as the first promise of rebellion stirred in Malik's chest. The night on Nkuba 9 stretched long and silent, broken only by the low hum of distant machinery buried beneath the dunes. Malik had built a small fire from fragments of fuel rods, its faint blue glow reflecting off Aya's tear-streaked face. She sat close, knees pulled to her chest, her eyes fixed on the stars. Her breathing came in soft tremors, and Malik could feel the depth of her loss pressing against the quiet like gravity. He handed her a thermal blanket. "Keep that wrapped tight. Nights here can freeze your blood." Aya nodded, but didn't answer. Her gaze stayed on the sky where twin moons hung like pale scars. Malik studied her, the patterns on her skin, the subtle flicker of light that rippled under her veins. Her kind wasn't built for war, not for suffering like this. And yet she endured, small and fierce, like every child forced to grow too soon. He checked his scanner. The human patrols were 2 sectors away, and if they picked up his energy signature, Command would know he'd broken protocol. He thought of his grandmother again, of her soft hands guiding him through the rough alleys of South Atlanta, teaching him how to survive when the system looked the other way. She used to say, "Sometimes doing right means breaking rules made to keep you silent." "Why did they hurt your people, Aya?" he asked quietly. She hesitated before speaking. "They said we were stealing the water." "But it's ours. It runs under our homes. We drink what the earth gives us." Malik's jaw tightened. He'd seen exploitation before, corporations branding resources as property, entire species turned into obstacles. The same greed that once chained his ancestors now stretched its reach across galaxies. Aya looked up at him, her voice small. "Will they come for us again?" "Not tonight," he said, scanning the horizon. "You're safe with me." She studied him for a moment, eyes reflecting the flickering blue fire. "You don't talk like the others," she said. "The soldiers, they sound empty." Malik smiled faintly. "Maybe they forgot what it means to listen." Aya tilted her head. "To listen?" He nodded. "Back on Earth we learned to survive through sound. Drums, voices, rhythm. Listening kept us alive when nothing else did. My people, we carry our stories in every beat." Aya pressed her hand to her chest, curious. "Like heartbeats?" "Exactly," he said. "Everyone means you're still fighting." For a moment the silence softened. Malik felt something shift, an invisible thread binding 2 worlds that shouldn't have met, but somehow understood each other. The fire crackled, and the stars seemed closer than they had any right to be. Then his comlink beeped softly. A message from Command. "Recon team reporting sector sweep complete. Return to base immediately. No civilian engagement authorized." Malik closed his eyes. The order was clear. Leave the alien child, report back, and forget this ever happened. But he couldn't. The sound of her mother's dying breath lingered in his ears, a rhythm he couldn't silence. He switched off the comlink. "Looks like I'm off duty for a while," he muttered. Aya looked at him with wide eyes. "Are you going to be punished?" He hesitated. "Maybe." "Then why stay?" Malik stared into the blue flames. "Because somebody has to." The girl moved closer, her small hand brushing his sleeve. Her touch was warm, trembling but sure. Malik felt the weight of the decision settle in his chest. He wasn't just breaking orders, he was crossing a line that could cost him everything. Yet in that moment, it didn't feel like defiance. It felt like truth. He reached into his pack and pulled out a ration bar, breaking it in half. "Eat. Tomorrow we find somewhere safer." Aya took it with both hands, nibbling quietly. The tension in her shoulders eased a little, and Malik allowed himself a slow breath. The stars shifted above them, and the wind changed, carrying faint echoes of movement from the north. Patrols, maybe. He'd have to move before dawn. Still, as he watched Aya's eyelids grow heavy, he whispered a promise he didn't fully understand yet. "You'll make it. I'll see to that." When the fire dimmed and the plains sank into shadow, Malik stayed awake, rifle across his knees, eyes fixed on the horizon. In the vast silence of Nkuba 9, his heart beat steady, loud against the void. A sound older than war, older than fear, a reminder that compassion was rebellion in its purest form. Dawn crept over the plains in muted shades of gold and crimson. The heat hadn't risen yet, and a fragile calm settled between the dunes. Malik knelt beside his rifle, disassembling it with careful precision. Each click, each metallic snap, echoed through the stillness like a heartbeat. Aya slept a few meters away, her small body curled under the blanket, her breathing soft and steady. Malik studied the weapon, the standard-issue M77 pulse rifle. He'd carried it for 6 years, through 2 deployments and countless patrols. It wasn't just a tool. It was a symbol of the system he'd sworn to serve, a system that told him who was worth saving and who wasn't. His reflection glimmered on the polished barrel, distorted and cold. He thought of his father, a mechanic from Atlanta who never trusted the military. A gun's just a promise waiting to break, his father once told him. Malik hadn't understood back then. Now he did. Aya stirred and opened her eyes. "You clean it like it's alive," she said softly. He smiled faintly. "In a way it is. A soldier's weapon remembers everything it's done. Every sound, every pull of the trigger stays inside." She sat up, clutching the blanket. "Do you remember too?" Malik paused. "More than I'd like to." Aya looked down at the sand, tracing patterns with her fingers. "My people say the land remembers everything too. The blood, the songs, even the lies. Then maybe the land and I have something in common," Malik said, setting the rifle aside. A gust of wind swept across the ridge, carrying with it the faint whir of distant drones. He checked his visor, 2 surveillance units patrolling to the east. If Command realized he was still here, helping a Tishari child, it wouldn't end with a reprimand. It would end with silence. He reassembled the rifle and slung it across his back. The weight felt heavier now, like it knew what he intended. Aya watched him with wide, curious eyes. "Are you leaving?" "No," he said firmly. "But we can't stay here." Her gaze fell on the scorched remains of the skimmer wreck. The dust had nearly swallowed it overnight, only fragments of silver metal still glinting beneath the sunlight. She whispered something in her language, a short, broken prayer. Malik couldn't understand the words, but he felt their meaning. "You talked to her?" he asked. Aya nodded. "To my mother." "She can't hear me, but the ground can. It carries her voice." Malik swallowed hard. The ache in his chest deepened. "Then we better make sure her voice isn't buried with her." He stood, scanning the landscape again. The plains stretched endlessly, dotted with ruined structures from the first wave of colonization. Somewhere beyond the horizon lay the edge of the human settlement zone. It would be dangerous, but maybe someone there would know why this attack happened. Aya tugged at his sleeve. "Why are you helping me? You don't even know me." Malik knelt so their eyes met. "Because I know what it feels like to be left behind, and because I made a promise," she frowned. "To my mother." "To myself," he said quietly. A faint beep interrupted them, his helmet's tracker trying to reconnect to command. Malik hesitated, then pulled the battery out and crushed it under his boot. The sound of breaking plastic felt like freedom. Aya jumped slightly. "You broke it." "Yeah," Malik said. "Guess I just broke a few rules too." He turned to the horizon, the rising suns painting the sky in molten colors. Somewhere deep inside, beneath years of discipline and duty, something had shifted. The man who once followed orders without question was gone. What remained was raw instinct, the human heart stripped bare in the face of injustice. He looked down at his rifle again, remembering his father's voice, his grandmother's hymns, and the rhythm of streets that no longer existed. The memories fused with the hum of alien winds, becoming something new, a promise born from both pain and love. He took a long breath. "Come on, Aya. We've got a lot of ground to cover." She rose, still clutching the blanket, and followed him into the open plains. Behind them, the wreck lay silent, a grave and a beginning. Ahead, the desert stretched endless and uncertain. Malik tightened his grip on the rifle, feeling its weight settle against his shoulder. This time, it wasn't just a weapon, it was a witness. By midday, the heat on Nkuba 9 turned merciless. The twin suns climbed high, bleaching the horizon and painting the world in blinding shades of gold. Malik's armor absorbed and recycled the warmth, but sweat still gathered on his neck. Aya trudged behind him, clutching the edge of his jacket, her steps light but uneven. The sand shifted beneath their feet like restless waves. Malik slowed his pace. "You holding up, little sister?" Aya looked up, eyes glassy but determined. "My feet hurt, but I can walk." "That's good," he said softly. "You're stronger than most soldiers I know." A faint smile tugged at her lips before fading into silence. She was trying not to cry again. Malik recognized that kind of strength. It was the kind born from loss, the kind no child should have to learn. They reached the remains of a rusted comm tower, half buried and broken. Malik guided her under the shade. He handed her a flask of water, rationed but cool. She took a small sip, then another, cautious, as if afraid to take too much. He crouched beside her. "You don't have to ration it like that. Drink. There's more in the pack." Her fingers trembled as she obeyed. "We used to have plenty," she murmured, "before they came." Malik didn't press her for details. The grief in her voice was enough. Instead, he leaned back and gazed at the distant dunes, shimmering under the heat. The silence of this world was heavy, almost sacred. Even the wind seemed to move slower, as if mourning. Aya broke the stillness. "Will my mother's body disappear now?" Malik turned toward her. "Disappear?" "She said the Tashari return to the dust when they die. Their blood feeds the ground and the ground keeps their memory, so she's still here, right?" His throat tightened. "Yeah," he said after a long pause. "She's here. Every time that wind blows, it's carrying her with it." Aya stared at the horizon, her expression unreadable. "Do humans believe that too?" He smiled faintly. "Some of us do. My grandmother used to say, nothing truly dies if someone remembers it right." Aya nodded, a flicker of comfort passing across her features. "Then I'll remember her, right." The words cut deep. Malik looked away, swallowing the ache in his chest. He'd buried more soldiers than he cared to count, but he'd never known what to say to a child who'd lost her whole world in one breath. Still, something about her resilience stirred a quiet admiration inside him. They sat in silence for a while until the air shimmered with the faint vibration of engines. Malik stiffened, scanning the distance. 2 patrol crafts glided across the sky, low and slow. Human design. He motioned for Aya to stay low. She crouched beside him, her hand gripping his sleeve tightly. "Are they bad?" "They're complicated," he whispered, "but right now we can't let them see us." The ships passed overhead, leaving ripples of dust in their wake. Malik held his breath until the hum faded into silence. Aya's grip on him didn't loosen until he spoke again. "It's okay, they're gone." She exhaled shakily, and he noticed tears she hadn't meant to shed. He wiped them away with the edge of his glove. "You did good," he said gently. "You stayed quiet, stayed strong." Aya's lower lip trembled. "I don't want to be strong anymore." Malik's voice softened. "You don't have to. Not all the time." For the first time, she leaned against him fully, her small frame trembling with exhaustion. Malik let her rest against his chest, staring out across the endless desert. The pulse of the planet vibrated faintly through the ground, a rhythm that matched his heartbeat. He thought of Earth again, of nights when he'd walk along Auburn Avenue, hearing the echo of street drums under the stars, voices rising in call and response, defiant and alive. That same rhythm lived here too, buried beneath alien soil. The names, the faces, the struggles, they all blurred into the same truth. Survival was a song, and every heartbeat was a verse. Aya stirred, whispering, "Do you think she felt pain?" Malik hesitated before answering. "Maybe, but she also felt love. Right until the end." The girl nodded slowly, and her breathing steadied. Malik watched the sky darken toward evening. Somewhere deep within, a quiet resolve began to take root. Protecting her wasn't duty anymore, it was purpose. He looked down at Aya, who had finally fallen asleep, her head resting against his chest. In her small, fragile body, he saw something greater than tragedy. He saw continuity, the living proof that kindness could outlast cruelty. He adjusted the strap of his rifle and whispered to himself, "We keep moving." As the twin suns dipped below the horizon, the wind rose again, whispering through the dunes like a promise yet to be kept. By the third night, the temperature had dropped so sharply that the air bit like glass. Malik and Aya moved through the ghost remains of what had once been a human outpost, corridors of rusted steel, half buried by decades of sandstorms. The structure stood alone in the desert like the skeleton of a forgotten promise. Malik's visor flickered with faint life signs inside the ruins. He hesitated, scanning for traps. "Stay close to me," he told Aya, voice low. "If I say run, you run." Aya nodded, her small hand clutching his sleeve. The deeper they went, the colder it grew. Lights flickered sporadically from old emergency batteries, revealing faded murals painted by the first colonists, bright colors, raised fists, and faces carved with pride. The art carried rhythm, defiance, and pain, echoes of the diaspora that had built the first wave of settlements before the corporations took control. Malik's chest tightened. His people had built this place, and now it was nothing but dust. A door slid open somewhere ahead. Malik raised his rifle, stepping forward silently. A voice came through the dark, firm, feminine, and familiar in tone. "You can put that down, soldier. I don't shoot unless I have to." Malik hesitated. Out of the shadows emerged a woman in a worn lab coat, her dark skin gleaming faintly under the flickering light. Her hair was tied back in a messy knot, and her expression was sharp but kind. "Dr. Naomi Clark," she said, extending a hand. "You're far from the safe zone, Sergeant." Malik lowered his weapon slightly. "Didn't know there were any researchers still out here." "Most of us left when the funding dried up," Naomi replied. "Some of us stayed because someone had to watch what was really happening." Her gaze dropped to Aya, who clung to Malik's arm. Naomi's eyes softened. "You've been through hell, haven't you, little one?" Aya didn't answer, but the flicker of trust in her eyes said enough. Naomi turned back to Malik. "You broke orders to help her, didn't you?" "Yeah," he said, "I did." "Then we're on the same side." Malik frowned. "Side of what?" "The truth," Naomi said simply. She led them deeper into the base, down corridors lined with old terminals and sealed doors. This outpost was a medical research site before the corporations shut it down. We were studying Tashari biology, symbiotic adaptations, healing structures. Turns out they don't just live on this planet. They're part of it. Their physiology is tied to the land itself. Malik's stomach tightened. "So when the company started mining, they tore the planet apart," Naomi finished, "and the Tashari started dying. They said it was a local conflict, but it's genocide dressed as economics." Aya's fingers clenched Malik's sleeve. Her eyes glowed faintly, reflecting the low light. "They said we were stealing water," she whispered. Naomi looked down at her. "They said the same about your ancestors too, didn't they, Sergeant? Every empire finds new words for the same cruelty." Malik's jaw tightened. "And you stayed out here to document it?" "To stop it," she said. "Or at least slow it down." She pointed toward a sealed door ahead. "Inside there's data, proof they targeted Tashari settlements to clear the land. But the systems are decaying. I need help pulling it out before it's lost." Malik hesitated. "If Command catches me—" "They already think you're a ghost," Naomi said quietly. "Might as well haunt them with the truth." For a long moment the air hung heavy with silence. Then Malik nodded. "All right, show me what to do." Aya looked between them, confusion shadowing her grief. "You'll make them stop." Malik placed a hand over her shoulder. "We'll try, that's all we can promise." Naomi smiled faintly, though her eyes were tired. "Then let's get to work before the desert eats what's left of our hope." The old generators hummed to life as she activated her console. Malik watched her hands move with steady precision, every keystroke echoing determination. Aya stood beside him, her gaze fixed on the glowing screens, as if sensing the importance of what they were uncovering. The outpost vibrated with power for the first time in years. Malik glanced toward the broken murals, faces of people who'd believed in something better. He realized that maybe loyalty wasn't about orders or flags. Maybe it was about standing with those who refused to look away. Outside, the wind rose again, scattering dust against the metal walls like whispers of forgotten ancestors urging him onward. The generators rumbled weakly through the night, casting a rhythmic pulse that echoed through the metallic halls. Malik sat near one of the terminals while Naomi worked in silence, her fingers moving across cracked screens that blinked with fragments of ancient code. The air was thick with static dust and quiet determination. Aya sat cross-legged beside them, humming softly to herself. The melody caught Malik's ear. It wasn't human, but it carried a structure, a rise and fall that reminded him of gospel harmonies, the kind sung by his grandmother in Atlanta before the world changed. The sound drifted like smoke through the air, a song of mourning and endurance. Naomi looked up briefly. That rhythm she's making, it's not random. The Tashari use tonal memory as communication. Their songs are coded with emotion. Malik nodded slowly, like a language built from heartbeats. Aya tilted her head, still humming. It helps me remember her, she said softly. When I sing, I feel her. Malik's voice dropped to a whisper. Back home, people used to do the same. We'd sing when we were hurting, when we were scared, when we needed to believe we'd see another morning. Aya's eyes brightened faintly, catching the flicker of the failing light. What did you sing about? Freedom, he said, smiling faintly. About making it through the night. Naomi paused her typing, her expression thoughtful. You know, that's what drew me to the Tashari in the first place. Their pulse patterns, their energy fields. They move in sync with natural frequencies, like a drumbeat you can feel in your bones. It's the same frequency found in old Earth blues. Maybe it's not just coincidence. Malik leaned back, the chair creaking beneath him. Maybe pain just speaks the same language, no matter the species. Naomi smiled sadly. And maybe music's how we translate it. For a moment, the only sound was Aya's quiet song weaving between the hum of the machines. Malik closed his eyes. In his mind, he was back in Atlanta. Heat rising from cracked pavement, children chasing rhythm through alleyways, his grandmother swaying in the doorway while the radio crackled with jazz. The world had been smaller then, but somehow fuller. When he opened his eyes, Aya was watching him. You look sad, she said. I was remembering something good, Malik replied. Sometimes that hurts too. Naomi exhaled softly, her voice growing low. Pain doesn't mean weakness, Sergeant. It's proof we still care. He nodded. That's what scares me. The terminal beeped suddenly. Naomi's hands flew over the keyboard, her eyes widening. I got something. Old communication logs, encrypted, but the structure's familiar. Malik straightened. What kind of logs? She hesitated, scrolling through the fragmented text. Transfer orders, lists of coordinates, all marked with the same human signature, Rhodes. The name made Malik's pulse quicken. Captain Rhodes. Naomi met his eyes. Your commanding officer? Yeah, he said, voice hardening. He's the one who told us the Tashari attacked first. Aya looked between them, sensing the shift in tone. He lied? Malik swallowed. Looks like it. Naomi's tone softened. If these records are right, Rhodes authorized strikes on settlements weeks before the incident your unit reported. They were clearing zones, expanding the mining perimeter. Malik's chest tightened. Memories flashed, briefing rooms filled with silence, coordinates that never made sense, orders that came without explanation. He clenched his fists. We weren't soldiers. We were cleanup. Naomi reached over, resting a hand on his arm. Now, you understand why they buried this place. Aya's voice trembled. They killed her. For rocks? Malik forced himself to meet her gaze. For power. For profit. People do terrible things when they stop seeing others as people. Aya turned her face away, whispering something in her native tongue, a sound of grief that seemed to vibrate through the air itself. The walls hummed faintly in response, resonating with her pain. Naomi's eyes widened. She's syncing with the structure, she murmured. Her species is linked to sound resonance. Their emotions can trigger harmonic fields. Malik rose to his feet, awe and sorrow blending inside him. She's singing to the planet. Aya looked up, her tears glowing faintly under the dim light. Then maybe the planet will remember her too, Naomi whispered. It already does. The generator flickered, casting long shadows across the murals. Malik felt a weight settle deep in his chest, the weight of history, of loss repeating itself under new names. He knew now that the truth they'd uncovered was only the beginning, and the cost of holding it might be higher than he could bear. But as Aya's song rose again, trembling and defiant, he also knew one thing with absolute certainty. He wasn't walking away. Not this time. The air inside the outpost had grown stale by morning. The generator's hum slowed to a faint, uneven rhythm. Naomi stood at the terminal, eyes dark with exhaustion, while Malik paced behind her, scanning the static-laced monitor feeds. The data they'd found was real. Too real. Each line of code, each timestamp confirmed the same truth. Captain Rhodes had sanctioned the destruction of Tashari settlements under the guise of resource control. Malik rubbed his temples, his voice low but edged. "We can't sit on this. I need to get those files to command." Naomi turned from the screen, her expression sharp. "And what do you think they'll do with them? Bury it. Erase it." "Then erase us." Her words hit like a cold slap. Malik wanted to argue, but deep down he knew she was right. Command didn't tolerate betrayal, especially not from one of their own. Aya sat near the corner, clutching a small pendant Naomi had given her, a piece of Tashari crystal wrapped in copper wire. It pulsed faintly, catching the dim light. Her voice broke the silence. "They'll come here, won't they?" Naomi nodded slowly. "They always come for what they fear." Malik's jaw tightened. He moved to the window slit, staring at the desert beyond. The sun burned pale behind the dust haze, turning the sky the color of old brass. "If Rhodes knows I'm still alive, he'll send a team. Maybe he already has." Naomi crossed her arms. "Then we stay quiet. We move when the sun drops." But Malik's mind was already spinning ahead. "There's a communications hub at the border of the human zone, Sector 9. If I can reach it, I can upload the files across the entire colony network. They'll see everything." Naomi frowned. "You'd be marked a traitor." He looked at Aya, then back at Naomi. "Then I'll be a traitor with a purpose." For a moment Naomi studied him, measuring the conviction in his voice, the same stubbornness she'd once had when she defied her own orders. Finally she sighed. "If we do this, we do it smart. I can mask your signal for a few minutes, no more. After that they'll trace you." Malik nodded. "A few minutes is all I'll need." Aya watched them, her expression unreadable. "You'll leave us?" The question stopped him. "No," he said quickly. "I'm not leaving you. I'm making sure what happened to your people doesn't happen again." Her gaze softened, but her voice trembled. "Every time someone says that, more of us disappear." Malik knelt in front of her, lowering his tone. "I can't promise what comes next, but I can promise I'll fight for you." Aya looked down at the crystal in her hands, its faint glow reflecting on her fingers. "Then I'll sing for you," she whispered. Naomi glanced at Malik. "She means it. The Tashari don't separate emotion from action. When they sing, the planet listens." Malik smiled faintly. "Then I'll take all the help I can get." Naomi returned to the terminal, packing the data drives into a small containment box. "I'll copy what I can. You'll need to travel light. And, Malik," her voice dropped lower, "Rhodes isn't just following orders. He's protecting something bigger. These aren't just mining operations, they're cover for weapon testing. Energy drawn from Tashari biology." Malik froze. "You mean they're experimenting on the living?" Naomi finished, her tone bitter. "That's why this has to reach everyone." The words twisted in Malik's gut. The scope of it all, the lies, the manipulation, was too vast to grasp fully. He felt the familiar burn of rage and helplessness fighting for control, but beneath it was something sharper, resolve. He took the containment box from Naomi. "If I don't come back," she interrupted, firm, "you will. And if you don't, I'll make sure your voice still reaches them." Aya stood, holding the crystal out toward him. "Take it," she said softly. "It will remember you." He hesitated before accepting it, the faint pulse against his palm like a second heartbeat. "Thank you, Aya." Naomi powered down the last terminal. "We move at dusk," she said, "and if Rhodes sends his men first, we'll make sure they regret finding us." Outside, the first winds of a desert storm began to rise, carrying with them the scent of metal and electricity. Malik stared into the haze, the edges of the horizon blurring into shadow. The truth was out there now, heavy and dangerous, a weapon he hadn't meant to hold, but could no longer put down. Night descended like a curtain of smoke. The desert wind howled across the ruins, shaking the rusted frames of the old outpost. Malik adjusted the containment box strapped to his chest, the drives humming faintly within. Naomi crouched near the door, eyes sharp, listening for movement. Aya clung to Malik's sleeve, her small body trembling from exhaustion and fear. "We move now," Naomi whispered. "Storm's thick enough to hide us. Once it clears, we're exposed." Malik nodded. The storm outside was vicious, lightning slicing through clouds of red dust, each flash illuminating the horizon like silent explosions. He looked down at Aya. "Stay close, little sister. You hear me?" She nodded, gripping his arm tighter. They stepped out into the storm. The sand hit them like shards, the air vibrating with static. Malik led the way, following the faint coordinates Naomi projected onto his visor. Sector 9 was still miles away, but every step was forward, every step defiance. Halfway through the dunes, a sharp tone pierced Malik's comlink. His blood froze. The signal wasn't Naomi's, it was command. He stopped walking, static crackling in his ear before a voice cut through, cold, controlled, familiar. "Sergeant Owens, this is Captain Rhodes. You've been off comms for 72 hours. Explain yourself." Malik glanced at Naomi. She mouthed, "Don't answer," but it was too late. Rhodes continued, "You're carrying unauthorized materials and a classified civilian asset. You are ordered to surrender immediately." Aya looked up at him, eyes wide. "Is that him?" "Yeah," Malik said quietly. "That's him." "Don't do it," Naomi urged. "He'll use your voice to triangulate us." Malik hesitated, torn between duty and the burning truth inside him. The sandstorm roared louder, swallowing their words, but Rhodes's voice cut through like steel. "I took you off the streets of Earth, Owens, made you a soldier. Don't throw that away for a dying alien child." Malik's grip on his rifle tightened. "You lied to us," he said into the comm, voice low but steady. "You killed civilians. You killed her mother." Static crackled. Then Rhodes's tone dropped, darker now. "You think you understand what's at stake? You have no idea what these creatures are. They're parasites. We're protecting humanity's future." Malik's breath came out in a slow hiss. "By destroying someone else's." The comm went silent for a long moment. Then Rhodes said quietly, "You're not thinking clearly, Sergeant. I can still bring you back. Don't make me label you hostile." Malik tore the earpiece from his helmet and crushed it beneath his boot. The sound of breaking plastic vanished beneath the wind. He turned to Naomi. "They're coming." Naomi's jaw tightened. "Then we move faster." They pressed on, the storm pushing against them like a living thing. Every breath burned, every step sank. Aya stumbled, and Malik scooped her into his arms, shielding her from the wind. Her voice was barely audible. "You're shaking." He managed a small, grim smile. "That's just the wind." But deep down, it wasn't just the storm. It was the realization that he'd crossed a line there was no coming back from. He wasn't just disobeying an order, he was defying everything he'd once believed in. Naomi stopped abruptly, crouching beside a boulder. Her scanner blinked red. Movement. Heat signatures. They're flanking us. Malik's pulse raced. "How far?" "Too close." The wind shifted, and through the swirling dust he saw shapes moving, armor glinting faintly under flashes of lightning. Rhodes's team. Naomi whispered, "We can't outrun them." Malik looked at the containment box. "Then we don't." She stared at him. "What are you saying?" "I'll draw them off," he said. "You take Aya and finish the upload." Naomi shook her head fiercely. "No." I won't let you throw yourself away. Aya clutched his arm. Don't go. Malik forced himself to meet her gaze. I need you to trust me. Remember what you told me. You'd sing for me. Then sing now. Stay alive. That's how you help me. Tears welled in her eyes, but she nodded. Naomi hesitated, then reached into her coat, handing Malik a pulse beacon. If you light this, they'll find you in minutes. That's the point, he said, gripping it tightly. Buy me time. Naomi looked at him one last time. You better come back, he smiled faintly. I always do. Then he turned toward the storm, activating the beacon. A bright flare cut through the darkness, painting his silhouette in white fire. As the wind screamed and the soldiers closed in, Malik felt the pulse crystal in his pocket beating like a second heart, one that belonged to something greater than war or obedience. And in that moment, his choice was made. The beacon's light faded into the storm, and Malik's footsteps vanished into the sand. Naomi and Aya moved in the opposite direction, their outlines swallowed by red dust and lightning. Malik didn't look back. He couldn't. His focus was locked on the figures closing in through the haze, armored soldiers, human silhouettes blurred by wind and betrayal. He crouched low behind a cluster of rocks, the storm raging above him. The pulse crystal in his pocket glowed faintly, beating in sync with his own heart. For a moment he thought of Earth, the smell of rain after summer storms, the rhythm of drums that once filled his childhood streets. He could almost hear them now, distant and steady, like the pulse of the planet beneath his boots. Rhodes's voice echoed from the calm frequencies he couldn't silence. You can still stop this, Owens. Surrender and we'll pretend this never happened. Malik smiled bitterly. You can't erase what's already burned into the ground. He switched to manual fire and opened the containment box, pulling out one of Naomi's drives. Its small data core glimmered with green light, proof of everything Rhodes had tried to hide. He pressed the transmitter Naomi had modified. The signal shot upward, vanishing into the electric storm. For a brief moment, Malik thought it might reach the colony grid. Then a sharp crack split the air, gunfire. He ducked, rolling behind cover as sand exploded around him. He returned fire not to kill, but to keep them away. His shots glowed blue, cutting through the red haze like thunderbolts. He wasn't fighting for victory now. He was buying time. Far away, deep under the dunes, Naomi's voice came through the weak channel she'd left open. Malik, I've got a partial upload. The colonies are seeing the transmission. The files are spreading. He gritted his teeth, firing another burst. Good. Keep pushing it. Rhodes's men were advancing fast, their voices muffled through the storm. Malik caught fragments. Traitor, asset compromised, terminate on sight. He loaded his last magazine and took a steady breath. This isn't about me, he whispered. It never was. Another blast rocked the ridge. Malik staggered but held his ground. Then, through the chaos, a low hum began to rise, a vibration that rolled beneath the sand, deep and resonant. The ground trembled. He frowned, turning his head. The hum grew louder, layered with rhythm, steady, pulsing, alive. Aya. He could feel it, the echo of her song traveling through the earth, amplified by the storm. The dunes shimmered faintly, waves of blue light flickering beneath the sand like veins of energy. The soldiers hesitated, some lowering their weapons in confusion. Then from the distance came the voices of hundreds. Malik turned toward the horizon. Human settlers were marching through the dust, carrying makeshift banners and weapons scavenged from the ruins. And among them, the tall, slender forms of Tishari warriors glowed faintly under the stormlight. Humans and aliens side by side. The rhythm Aya had sent through the ground had called them all. A chant rose, a fusion of human voices and alien tones, rough but united. It wasn't a war cry. It was something older, something primal, a demand to be seen. Malik's chest swelled with a feeling he couldn't name. This was it, the moment the world shifted. He lifted his rifle not to fire but to signal the charge. The storm roared, lightning striking in wide arcs above as if the planet itself had awakened. Rhodes's voice returned, sharp with disbelief. You started a riot! Malik laughed softly. No, Captain. I started a revolution. The settlers clashed with the armored troops, dust and thunder mingling in chaos. Malik moved through the storm like a phantom, guiding people toward cover, shouting orders, pulling the wounded to safety. The chant grew louder, echoing across the plains. Through the chaos, he caught sight of Naomi and Aya emerging from the haze. Aya's eyes glowed with fierce light, her song now a tremor in the very air. Naomi met Malik's gaze and shouted over the wind. The broadcast reached the council. They can't deny it anymore. Malik smiled through grit and exhaustion. Then we've already won. The soldiers began to falter, confusion breaking their line as their comms filled with voices, civilian protests, colony leaders demanding answers, Rhodes's authority unraveling in real time. Malik lowered his weapon, chest heaving. The fight wasn't over, but something irreversible had begun. Humanity's silence had cracked. The people of Nkuba 9, human and Tishari alike, had found their voice. Lightning split the horizon one last time, revealing Malik standing amid the storm, the pulse crystal in his hand glowing brighter than before. He looked toward the dark sky and whispered, "We're done being silent." The storm had turned into chaos. Smoke and dust twisted through the air, blurring every shape into a storm-colored shadow. Malik moved through the wreckage with the focus of instinct, rifle in one hand, the other gripping the glowing crystal tight against his chest. Around him, the sounds of resistance pulsed, human voices crying out commands, the deep resonance of Tishari harmonics shaking the ground beneath their feet. The rebellion had begun, but the cost was rising with every passing minute. Naomi's voice cracked through his calm. "Malik, they're deploying drones from the ridge. They're armed with plasma rounds. If they breach the line, they'll burn the settlement to glass." Malik scanned the horizon. He could see them, sleek machines cutting through the haze like metal vultures. Their engines hummed with a deadly calm. "How long until they're in range?" 2 minutes, maybe less. Aya stood nearby, her hands clasped around the pendant Naomi had given her. Her eyes flickered with faint blue light, the same rhythm Malik felt in his own chest. She whispered, "They want to erase us." He crouched beside her, his voice low. "Then we make sure they can't." He stood, signaling the fighters around him. "Form a perimeter. Focus fire on the ridge." The human rebels responded with a roar. The Tishari harmonics deepened, resonating with the sound of human gunfire, until both rhythms merged into one wild, unstoppable pulse. Naomi appeared from the shadows, dirt streaked across her face, carrying a makeshift signal disruptor. "If I can jam their targeting system, we'll have a few seconds before the drones adapt." "Do it," Malik said. "I'll cover you." She hesitated. "That's not cover fire I need, it's time." Malik caught her meaning immediately. "How long?" 30 seconds. He looked at her, then at the sky. "You'll have it." As Naomi sprinted toward the ridge, Malik opened fire. The pulse rifle kicked against his shoulder, streaks of blue cutting through the storm. The drones veered off course, but more followed, weaving between bursts of energy. Behind him, Aya began to hum, her voice trembling but clear. The sound spread like a ripple through the battlefield. Every Tishari within earshot joined her, their tones blending into a single resonance that grew louder, thicker, more alive. The sand beneath Malik's boots vibrated, shifting color from red to a faint electric hue. "Naomi, whatever you're doing, do it faster," Malik shouted. Her voice came through the comm, strained but determined. "Almost there, hold them off." A drone swooped low, firing a burst that scorched the ground inches from Malik's leg. He rolled, aimed, and fired back. The drone exploded mid-air, scattering fragments that glowed like dying stars. He barely caught his breath before another wave descended. Then, a blinding flash erupted from the ridge. Naomi's disruptor activated. Every drone in the sky jerked violently, lights flickering. For a few seconds, the battlefield went silent, except for the wind. Then, one by one, the drones lost control and crashed into the sand. Malik lowered his weapon, chest heaving. "Naomi, you did it." Her reply was faint, weak. "Not for long." He turned toward the ridge and froze. Smoke curled upward where she had been. The disruptor still pulsed, but Naomi was on her knees, clutching her side. Naomi! He sprinted toward her, but the ground shook violently beneath his feet. A shockwave rolled across the dunes as the central power cell of the disruptor detonated. Heat and sand swallowed everything. When the air cleared, Malik found her collapsed against a broken console, eyes half open, blood dark against her coat. She managed a tired smile. "I told you. 30 seconds. He dropped beside her, voice breaking. "You saved them." Her breathing slowed. "No. We did. Don't waste it, Malik." Aya appeared behind him, her small face streaked with tears. She pressed the glowing crystal against Naomi's hand. The light pulsed once, twice, then faded. Malik bowed his head. The world seemed to hold its breath. Around them the rebels regrouped, their chants rising through the fading storm, human and Tashari voices woven together. Malik looked at Aya, her voice trembling as she whispered, "She's gone, isn't she?" He nodded slowly. "Yeah. But what she did, what we did, it's just beginning." In the distance, the first rays of dawn broke through the ash-colored sky, painting the sand in gold and fire. The war wasn't over, but for the first time, Malik felt something like hope burning through the dust. The world around Malik seemed to slow, as if time itself had paused to mourn. Naomi lay against the wreckage of the disruptor, her breath shallow, every inhale a struggle. The first rays of dawn bled into the sky, painting the battlefield in hues of red and orange. But to Malik, everything felt dimmed by the loss of her light, the spark of defiance that had ignited their rebellion. Aya knelt beside Naomi, her small hands trembling as she reached out to touch the older woman's face. Naomi's eyes fluttered open, catching sight of the girl. There was a brief flicker of recognition, then the ghost of a smile. "You did good, kid," Naomi whispered, her voice raspy. "You all did." Aya choked back a sob, but Naomi raised a hand weakly, cupping the girl's cheek. "You're stronger than they ever knew. Don't forget that." Malik's chest tightened, his mind racing. There was no time. He needed to move, needed to do something. But Naomi's hand reached out for him, her eyes locking onto his. "Malik," she said, her voice barely audible now. "You have to make them listen. This isn't over. Until they hear us." He nodded, swallowing hard. His fingers curled around her hand, the warmth already fading. "I will, I promise." Her breathing became more labored, the weight of her body pressing into the sand. But despite the pain, Naomi's gaze held steady, unwavering in its resolve. "You fight for more than just us," she said, each word a struggle, "for everyone who's been silenced, every single one of them. You don't stop. You don't let them stop you." Malik clenched his jaw, his heart breaking with every word. Naomi had given them a chance, her chance, without hesitation. She was more than just a scientist or a rebel leader. She had become the lifeblood of this rebellion, the fire that had sparked it into existence. He couldn't let that die here. Naomi's eyes fluttered, the faint pulse in her hand slowing. "Remember what you promised," she whispered, barely a breath. "You fight until their voices are gone." With that final sigh, Naomi Clark slipped into the silence, leaving behind only the lingering echo of her sacrifice. Malik stared down at her, his chest tight as grief swelled up, raw and overwhelming. He closed his eyes for a moment, taking in the weight of it all, her sacrifice, the battles they had won, and the price they had all paid. Aya was still beside Naomi, her face streaked with tears, her tiny hands clutching the pendant tightly. She hadn't moved, hadn't said a word. The faint hum of her voice still lingered in the air, the harmonics slowly fading as if the planet itself had begun to mourn. Malik crouched beside them, his voice soft. "We don't let this be for nothing." Aya's eyes met his, hollow and searching. "What do we do now?" Malik's gaze drifted across the battlefield, the humans and Tashari fighting side by side, their efforts pushing back the remnants of Rhodes's forces. The drones had fallen, but there was still work to be done, still a rebellion to finish. He stood, his fingers brushing against the pulse crystal in his pocket. Naomi's words rang in his mind. "You don't stop." You don't let them stop you. He took a deep breath, looking down at Aya. We finish what she started. With a final glance at Naomi's still form, Malik turned and walked toward the front lines, his every step feeling heavier than the last. But there was no turning back now. There were too many lives, too many voices that had been silenced for far too long. In the distance, the sounds of battle still raged, but they no longer felt hopeless. This wasn't just a fight, it was a reckoning. The truth would rise, no matter the cost. Aya followed him, her voice trembling as she spoke. I'll keep singing. I'll make them hear us. Malik glanced back, a flicker of something like hope sparking in his chest. You already have. Together they moved toward the future, a future that was still uncertain, but one they would forge with their own hands. Naomi's sacrifice had given them the fire. Now they would carry it forward. The stars were brighter than they'd ever been before, but the world beneath them was still shadowed in grief. The battle was over for now, the rebels victorious. But victory came with a heavy price. The remnants of Rhodes's soldiers had scattered, retreating into the storm, but the cost of freedom was etched on every face that had fought. Malik stood in the quiet aftermath, the weight of Naomi's death still heavy on his chest. He hadn't left the battlefield, not even to rest. The memory of her final words, the fire she had sparked, still burned within him. He had promised her he wouldn't stop, and he wasn't about to break that promise. Aya had found a place to sit, her small form surrounded by the wounded, helping where she could, her soft, humming voice guiding the injured to safety. Her voice had become a lifeline, not just for herself, but for everyone around her. The Tashari hums had become louder, more defined, as if the planet itself was joining her in the effort. Malik walked toward her, his boots heavy in the sand. The air had cooled, and the desert night wrapped them in an uneasy stillness. The sounds of distant fires and the hum of voices filled the air, but for Malik everything felt muffled, like he was underwater. His gaze fixed on Aya as she looked up from her work. "You okay?" he asked, his voice softer than he intended. She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she looked at him with eyes that had seen too much, eyes that had grown older with the weight of everything she had lost. "Will we ever stop fighting?" The question hit Malik harder than he expected. He sat beside her, drawing in a long breath. "I don't know, Aya, but I know one thing. We keep fighting because we have to. Because if we don't, everything Naomi did, everything she gave us—" He trailed off, the weight of his own words heavy in the still night air. Aya wrapped her arms around her knees, her voice trembling. "It doesn't feel like we're winning. It feels like we're just waiting for the next fight." Malik's heart ached for her. I know, but it's not always about winning right away. Sometimes it's about showing them we're still here, that we haven't been broken." She looked at him, eyes searching for something in his face, something that could give her peace. "Are you still fighting for them?" she asked quietly. Malik paused. It wasn't a simple question. He thought of the humans who had been hurt, of the Tishari, and of every person who had been exploited and silenced. But he thought of Naomi too, her sacrifice, the life she'd given for this fight. "I'm fighting for all of us," he said, his voice firm now. "For the ones who are still here and for the ones who will come after us. Because if we don't stand up, if we don't keep pushing back—" He let out a slow breath, then continued, "then it's like we're letting them win, even if we're not dead yet." Aya's voice was quieter, but there was something steadier in it. "I don't want to wait anymore. I want to help. I want to make sure they never hurt anyone again." Malik turned to face her, his gaze intense. "You already are, Aya. Every time you sing, you remind them that we're still here, that we won't fade into the dust." A soft silence fell between them, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was the kind of silence that came after a storm, when you could hear the earth settling back into place. Aya slowly stood, and Malik followed her gaze toward the horizon. The stars still glittered above, like the voices of 1,000 ancestors, reminding them they weren't alone. "We'll keep moving," Malik said, breaking the quiet, "because we have no choice." Aya nodded, her face set with a quiet resolve. "Then we'll make sure they hear us, every day. We won't stop until they do." Malik smiled faintly, his heart lightening a little. That's the spirit. As the night deepened, the distant sounds of the rebellion simmered, but it was a different kind of hum now, less chaotic, more purposeful. The wounded were being tended to, the survivors finding strength in each other. The fight was far from over, but for the first time it didn't feel like they were fighting alone. Aya's voice rose softly in the distance, a hum, a song weaving through the air, stirring the hearts of those still listening. Malik felt the rhythm in his chest again, the reminder that they had not been forgotten, that the fight for their future had just begun. As the stars blinked overhead, Malik knew one thing: the long night might stretch on, but the dawn would come. The day broke cold and sharp, the sun piercing through the remnants of the storm like a fiery blade. Nkuba Nine's red soil seemed to burn brighter under its rays, the landscape stretching endlessly, both beautiful and hostile. The remnants of the battle were still visible, the scorched earth, the smoke rising from distant ruins and the bodies of both humans and Tashari alike. The planet had bled for its freedom, but it wasn't done yet. Malik stood at the edge of the rebel camp, the pulse rifle now slung low across his back, its weight like a constant reminder of what was lost and what was still to be won. His face was drawn, the fatigue of the past few days showing in the heavy lines beneath his eyes. The sounds of the camp, voices, cries, murmurs of unity, felt distant, like a dream he hadn't yet woken from. Aya was beside him, her gaze fixed on the horizon. Her hum had quieted now, but the song was still with them, running beneath the surface of every word, every movement. She hadn't spoken much since Naomi's sacrifice, but she'd been carrying on as if the weight of the world hadn't fallen on her small shoulders. Malik felt it too, the pull of grief, the desire to stop for a moment, to let it all wash over him. But he couldn't, not now. He had promised Naomi he wouldn't stop, and more than that, he owed it to the people of Nkuba Nine, to the ones who had fought, to the ones who had died. "They're waiting for you," Aya said softly, not looking up at him. Malik turned, following her gaze to the center of the camp, where the leaders of both the human rebels and the Tashari were gathered. They were discussing the next steps, how to rebuild, how to resist the corporate forces still lurking in the shadows. But they weren't the only ones waiting. Malik knew this was more than just a conversation. It was a trial of leadership, a trial of truth. He walked toward them, his steps firm, his chest tight. Every one of them would look to him now, not just as a soldier, but as the symbol of something far bigger, something more important, a voice that refused to be silenced. As he reached the circle, Captain Rhodes stood, flanked by his own remaining soldiers, now prisoners. Their faces were marked with a mixture of defiance and fear, but there was no anger in Malik's chest, no burning desire for revenge. He had come to understand something in the past few days. Revenge would not change the future. The past was a wound that would never fully heal. What mattered now was the path they would forge moving forward. One of the Tashari elders, a tall figure with eyes like molten gold, stepped forward. His name was Qatar, and his species had borne the brunt of this war, displaced, hunted, enslaved. Yet his voice held a quiet strength as he spoke. "Malik Owens, you've fought. You've bled for our world," Qatar began, his voice resonating with the ancient hum of his people. "But you must answer the question that lies before us now. What will you do with the power you've inherited? Will you seek vengeance, or will you seek peace?" Malik met his gaze, feeling the weight of every pair of eyes on him. The humans and Tashari alike waited for his answer. He looked at the prisoners, the broken remnants of Rhodes's forces, and then to the survivors, their faces still raw but determined. He saw in their eyes the same question Qatar had asked, and he realized that his answer would not just define him, but the future of everyone who had fought for this planet. He stepped forward, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "We are all survivors here. Every one of us, and we have paid a price that will never be forgotten. But if we want to heal, if we want to move forward, then we cannot let our past define us. We cannot be bound by vengeance, by the ghosts of what was lost. We fight for what comes next, for the future we can build." His words hung in the air, heavy with the truth they all had to face. Qatar's golden eyes softened, and for a moment Malik thought he might speak. But then the elder nodded, his voice low and solemn. "You have answered well, Malik Owens, but your words must be followed by actions." Malik nodded. "I know, and I'm ready." A murmur passed through the crowd, a sense of unity that had been missing before. There was no turning back now. The trial of the sun, the moment when everything they had fought for would be tested, had begun. Aya stepped forward, her voice barely above a whisper. "We'll make them hear us," she said, the hum of her song rising once more. "We'll make sure they never forget." Malik turned to her, and for the first time in days a smile tugged at his lips. "Yes, we will." And with that the sun rose higher, casting its light over Nkuba 9, not as a sign of victory but as a promise that the future was theirs to shape together. The sun rose over Nkuba 9 not with fire, but with warmth. Soft rays spilled over the horizon, brushing against the worn buildings, the scorched ridges, the quiet faces of those who had survived. For the first time in weeks there were no alarms, no gunfire, no voices raised in panic. Just breath, just light, just life. Malik stood on the northern slope of the old mining sector, looking down at what had once been a battlefield, and now looked like the beginning of a city. The rebels, human and Tashari alike, had begun rebuilding in earnest. Tents had turned into shelters. Broken machines were repurposed into tools, and everywhere he looked, people worked together. Aya ran past him with a group of Tashari children, her laughter echoing as they chased each other around the scaffolding of a new watchtower. Her eyes were brighter now. She still hummed, but the tones were lighter, hopeful. "She's changed," said a voice beside him. Malik turned to see Qatar approach, his gait slow but dignified, his robes marked with fresh ash and old wisdom. "She's healing," Malik replied. "The land, too." Qatar gazed out at the growing village, his voice thoughtful. "The scars will remain, but scars are not shame. They are proof we survived." Malik nodded slowly. "And a reminder to never let it happen again." They stood in silence, the wind weaving gently through the hills. Somewhere below, music began to rise, real music, not just humming. A rhythm built from wood, from metal, from memory. Some of the settlers had begun crafting drums from old salvage. Others were teaching the Tashari how to shape tone with their natural resonances. It wasn't just noise. It was a declaration. Naomi's name was carved into a central stone pillar, surrounded by flowers, bits of crystal, and cloth strips marked with prayers. Malik had placed his dog tags there 3 nights ago and hadn't gone back since. He didn't need to. Her presence lived in everything now, in the way they treated the wounded, in the way they trained together, in the way they listened. "She would have been proud," Qatar said. Malik didn't answer right away. His chest still ached when he thought of her voice, her fire, her certainty, but that pain had found its place beside his purpose. "I hope she knows," he said quietly. Qatar placed a hand on his shoulder. "She does. Your actions carry her forward." From behind them came a new voice, one of the young human leaders from the Settlement Council. "Sergeant Owens, sorry, Director Owens now," she said with a smile. "They're ready to finalize the trade protocols with the Tashari delegation." Malik raised an eyebrow. "That's fast." "We've lost too much time already," she replied. "This planet doesn't need another government. It needs a community." He glanced at Qatar, who gave him a nod. "Then let's make sure we build it right," Malik said. As they descended the ridge, Malik saw Aya waiting at the base, her hands behind her back. She was wearing a hand-woven sash that blended both human and Tashari patterns, a gift from both cultures. "I made something," she said, revealing a polished stone pendant etched with a symbol, a swirl of stars and lines that represented both rhythm and light. "It's beautiful," Malik said. "What does it mean?" "It means we remember," she said softly. Malik took the pendant, feeling its weight in his hand. He didn't speak, but Aya didn't need him to. She walked beside him as they moved toward the new council gathering, the morning light catching in her hair. The plaza was small, but it pulsed with life. Elders, engineers, warriors, children, all seated together, listening, planning, building. The world hadn't changed overnight, but a new one had begun to take root in its place. Malik stepped up to speak, not as a soldier, but as a man who had once followed orders blindly and now understood the strength of choosing otherwise. He cleared his throat. "We're not here to lead," he began. "We're here to build something no one else could, together, and we're not going to stop until every voice is heard." Applause followed, not loud but honest. Above them the sun climbed higher, casting gold over the people of Nkuba 9. Not conquerors, not victims, builders. The sun had long passed its peak when Malik returned to the ridge one last time. The rebuilt settlement below shimmered in the golden light, its buildings no longer temporary shelters, but foundations for something enduring. Smoke rose from cook fires, not wreckage. Voices drifted upward, laughter, conversation, the quiet rhythm of drums tapping out new beginnings. Malik stood alone, not out of sorrow, but reflection. The wind carried a soft warmth now, wrapping around him like a memory. He reached into his coat and pulled out the pendant Aya had given him. The carved lines caught the fading light, and for a moment it pulsed with the same rhythm as his heartbeat. He closed his eyes. He saw Naomi, her eyes full of fire, her voice unshakable. He saw her walking through storms, standing beside him when no one else dared. He saw Aya's mother dying with dignity and defiance, whispering thanks to a stranger. He saw Qatar's people singing under attack, refusing to be erased. He saw every soul who had stood up when it was easier to sit down. Aya's footsteps approached behind him. She stopped at his side without a word. Together, they looked across the land. "She would have liked this view," Malik said quietly. Aya didn't speak at first. Then, softly, "She still sees it. They all do." He nodded. He wanted to believe that. No, he did believe it. "Do you think it'll last?" she asked. Malik thought for a long moment. "It'll last as long as we protect it. That's the promise." She looked at him. "Whose promise?" He turned to her. "Ours." They walked down the ridge together, slow and unhurried. As they passed through the camp, people greeted them. Tishari elders with deep bows, human children waving from rooftops, engineers adjusting solar panels, healers passing out medicine synthesized from both cultures. Malik no longer felt like a soldier. He felt like a link between the world that had burned and the world that had bloomed from its ashes. Inside the central council hall, the assembly waited. They had chosen Malik not by vote but by trust. They didn't need a title for him. He wasn't governor, general, or commander. He was the one who had stayed, the one who had listened. Aya sat in the front, holding the pulse crystal in her lap like it was sacred. Malik stepped forward, clearing his throat. "I don't have a speech," he began. No declarations, no big words. He looked around the room, making sure to meet every pair of eyes. "But I've walked this land. I've seen its pain. I've seen its people. And I've seen something else, something stronger than fear or power or greed. I've seen the will to remember." He gestured toward Aya. "This child reminded me of something we lost. A rhythm, a story, a truth buried in dust and blood, but she never stopped singing. Even when her world fell apart, she kept singing." The room was still, silent. "We can't undo what's been done, but we can make sure no one forgets it. Not ever again. That's how we honor the dead, that's how we protect the living, with memory, with truth. With the kind of courage that doesn't fire weapons, but stands firm." A quiet murmur of agreement rippled through the room. Malik took a breath, grounding himself in the moment. This planet belongs to those who nurture it, and from this day forward, it will be guided by the voices of all who live here. Human, Tishari, born or arrived. No more silence, no more shadows. He looked toward the entrance. Outside, the suns had begun to lower, painting the sky in layers of amber and violet. If you want to honor Naomi, if you want to honor any of those we've lost, then don't build statues. Build justice, build trust, build with your hands, build with your hearts. He stepped back, and the room erupted in quiet applause, not thunderous but deep, solid. like the beginning of a song. Later, as the evening fell, Malik returned to the place where it all began, where the girl had cried out for help, where a mother had died in the dust, where a man with a gun chose compassion over orders. He placed the pendant in the sand and whispered, "You're not forgotten." Then, turning toward the glowing settlement below, he said softly, "We're still here." And we're not done. If this story moved you, if you believe in the power of courage, unity, and memory, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. There are more stories ahead. And if you're ready for the next chapter, click the video on your screen and keep walking with us. The journey continues.